right, well, welcome to another edition of Weekend Update for the Sports Guys. Today is October 21st, 2024. After another really packed weekend of sports, we have a lot to cover tonight, so we're going to get right into it. How you doing, Robbie?
Doing really well, thanks.
Good, man. What big stories kind of hit you coming out of the weekend?
Oh, man. There was so many. I think the biggest one was two things. Georgia beating Texas and Tony Bennett retiring.
Those are your two big ones? Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
I could see that. Yeah, Tony Bennett was a complete shock to the whole college sports world. We're going to get really deep into that one. I think for me it was that, but also, like you said, Georgia absolutely not just beating Texas, but dismantling Texas. I mean, literally making them look like a group of five team or something. Couldn't get a pass off, couldn't run the ball, turnovers all over the place. And then I think the Tennessee win over Alabama was kind of a shot across the bow of Crimson Tide fans everywhere that, this team just isn't that good this year. And Milroe, being a second-year guy, incredibly talented, very fast, but very inaccurate and just not a great quarterback yet. I think he will develop into one, but really has a lot of flaws. So Alabama's kind of dropped out of the projected college football playoff race, and it's really kind of shocking for everybody. And on the NFL side, the epic game between maybe the two best teams in the NFC, with the Lions beating the Vikings 31-29 in an epic game that, really
awesome.
came down to the last possession. And it was really cool to see. You almost feel like that's going to be the NFC Championship game.
It felt like a playoff game.
They really did. Those two teams are really great on both sides of the ball. The biggest surprise for me out of that game was I was very worried about the Lions without Hutchinson, and they were able to not just apply pressure, but bottle up Darnold all day, apply so much pressure that he was getting the ball off against, his normal pattern. He's having to get it off a lot earlier than normal. So if they can continue to get pressure without Hutchinson, that's pretty impressive.
Mm-hmm.
So
they've just been drafting so perfectly that they've loaded up on talent. They never miss.
It's true.
Whether it's Laporta or, Penny Sewell, they just crush home run after home run in the draft. And they set the standard for the whole league, really, because they're just drafting. All these guys are under league minimum contract or whatever. And they're the only person they're paying is Goff.
That's right. That's right. I thought the baseball series were really great. Both of them went to game 6. The Mets played really well. I thought that Cleveland really fought hard, but the two teams that everyone thought were going to be there and that everyone really kind of wanted to be there are there, and that's the Yankees and the Dodgers. And we'll see those two teams start up here this Friday in hopefully an epic series, maybe a game 6, game 7 scenario.
I joked a couple episodes ago that the New Yorkers wanted the New York versus New York series, but what Major League Baseball wanted and what baseball fans wanted was Dodgers, Yankees, and that's what we got. So.
Ohtani Judge, yeah. We'll get into it. We'll get deep into it. Let's go take a look at what we got for the weekend.
Let's do it.
All right, so this is our weekend update, October 21st, 2021. As you can see here, really great photo from that game you talked about. We both mentioned the Georgia-Texas game. Everyone was kind of wondering what would happen here. There was a perception that, these are the two best teams in the country. And after the game, it really was a little bit of a head-scratcher from a Texas perspective. They looked kind of unprepared, for this game. And Georgia just looked completely geeked up to kind of prove themselves again after their one loss. So you got that to talk about. And then, of course, we have the Yankees-Dodgers series. We have the Lions coming out on top in their big matchup against the Vikings. A lot of people now are saying they and the Chiefs are the two best teams in football. And then, of course, Georgia reasserting itself. So we'll get into all those things here. So some of the big headlines coming out of the college football week 8. Welcome to the new wild SEC, where nothing outside of Georgia dominating makes much sense. And it really is kind of true. You just never know. All these teams can beat each other. It's just a total gauntlet. So whether you're Alabama or Auburn or Texas A&M or any of these teams. Vanderbilt. Everyone you play every week. Missouri, there's just no easy out. Yeah. There's just no that's easy. And it's just really making for great football for the casual fan or even the intense football fan. So another one coming out of the weekend, chaotic 2024 season is trending towards all-time great status. And I know that we're doing the podcast now that we're kind of oversensitive to all these results, but it just feels that way to me. It feels like I've never seen such a great college football season where it's so unpredictable. And there's so many good matchups every week, and there's so many upsets and so many big games.
I have frequently said that there are not a lot of upsets normally in college, and that's still kind of true, but there's parity. There's a lot of teams where you just don't know who's going to win. So I wouldn't call it an upset, but I would call it more parity than we've ever seen in college. I think that that's true. It's not NFL parity where, the worst team can beat the best team, but you literally have teams where you look at it and the line is so small between the two, and when the other team wins, it's just not a surprise.
Well, what's happened is you didn't used to have free agency in college football. Now you
Yeah.
do. So in the old days, Georgia, Alabama, and Ohio State would vacuum up all the 5-stars.
It would steamroll everybody until they played each other.
Yeah, and then they would be locked in for 4 or 5 years and couldn't go anywhere because there was no free agency. And
Yeah.
so all the big teams had all the big players, Michigan. And now that's not true. If a guy's sitting third on the depth chart, he just leaves and goes somewhere else where he can play.
He might go to Vanderbilt,
He'll go to Vanderbilt, yeah, or to Indiana. You see a great picture there on the right of the Indiana quarterback. They've been completely surprising this year, sitting 7-0, and they were probably the most active any team in the transfer portal. They picked up a lot of great talent. So another headline coming out: Tennessee knocks off Alabama and knocks them out of the bracket. So most of the pundits who are following this playoff bracket really closely say Alabama's on the outside looking in now, and they're going to have to do something really incredible, like knock off Georgia later in the year, or run the table, or do something, because they're sitting at 5-2 and really kind of not in very good position for the playoff. Any thoughts about that?
I mean, so many thoughts. I've been clinging to the Alabama is one of the best teams in the country idea, and watching their defense, I'm just having to move away from that idea a little bit. I still think their offense is good, but their defense is seriously lacking. It does not have that same Alabama feel. In fact, both teams went into this weekend with maligned defenses, Alabama and Georgia. And Georgia's opened a can of whoop ass,
Good
and
Lord.
Alabama's got smoked. And it just
I haven't seen a defensive performance like Georgia's in a long time. It was just a dismantling. It was crazy.
It was. And you know what's crazy was Texas's D didn't play badly. They had a lot of but they got so overshadowed that all you heard about now is Georgia's defense.
And I think yours is decent, but I think he definitely his stock dropped in that game because it's clear he's going to face that kind of pressure in the pros, and he couldn't handle it.
I think it's an overreaction. I think
he's not a very mobile quarterback like Arch is.
Well, yeah, we'll get to that, but I don't think that. I think his stock shouldn't drop much. If you're a clear thinking scout, you're not going to let that game diminish you too much. I think a lot of these quarterbacks are going to be good, but they're going to be projects. Check in on them year 3 in the NFL, not year 1.
Probably.
These guys aren't ready to go like Daniels is or something like that.
So another big headline: Oregon and Georgia now on top 1 and 2. Oregon sitting at 1, Georgia at 2. They leapfrogged three teams. And Colorado enters the top 25. They've had a really good couple weeks. Shedeur is playing great. Travis Hunter playing great. And, they've really turned their season around. They were sitting at 2 and 2. Now they're at 5 and 2. And they've entered the top 25. So who knows how far they'll go. Any thoughts about these three?
So many thoughts. Oregon's healthy, so they're doing better. I think Georgia's the best team in the country. They've only had one bad half of football this year. And it was to Alabama, who was playing unbelievably well at home. So Georgia, to me, is the best team in the country. I think Oregon isn't far behind them. Colorado is a real nice team, especially offensively. Shedeur Sanders might be the best quarterback in football. They were showing his mechanics. He can do all the throws, and he carries himself like a pro. And he's carrying this team to wins. So, that's a team that's fun to watch because of him, basically.
Right.
And of course, they have a couple other really amazing players, but they do not have a deep team. I've been impressed looking at their defense the last few weeks. It's actually doing decently.
It's
So,
better than it was last year for sure. And
oh yeah,
Colorado's offensive line's a little better than it was last year. Last year was pretty
yeah,
poor.
the whole team's a little better.
Mhm.
If you could
They're
give this team a little more time together, they'd probably
I
be
think
pretty good.
they're right around 23, 24, 25. They're right in there. They're not
Yeah,
a playoff team or anything like that.
yeah,
But yeah, they're exciting. Really exciting to watch. Their ratings are really high, by the way.
yeah.
So another headline: Oregon replaces Texas at number one. Texas drops from 1 to 5 after their performance with Georgia. Wasn't even really competitive. And then Michigan falls from college football rankings for the first time in 4 years, not even
Yeah.
in the top 25. So that's pretty interesting that Michigan has had so many losses this year. They're just kind of a afterthought in the Big Ten rankings.
Well, they have really, really poor quarterback play, and they have 3 quarterback options, and they're not sure who's going to be the starter. So that's not a
Yeah.
good. You're halfway through your season. It's not a good place to be.
Halfway through the season, they're scoring 11 points a game. That's just not
Yeah,
going to get it done,
yeah.
even in the Big
I
Ten,
was,
which is lower scoring.
I was looking at all the rankings and stats, and they're really close to. I think they're 91st,
Yeah,
91st in offensive categories, and it's just not gonna. That's not gonna win you a national championship.
absolutely. Yeah. And then you have Indiana routing Nebraska 56-9 or something like that. We'll look at that score here in a minute. But is it time to start respecting Indiana sitting at 7-0? They just feel like they're under the radar. No one's talking about them. They're just outside the top 12 and
I think so.
kind of edging up into the top 12 now. And I think we should start respecting this team.
No question.
I mean, they're just dismantling a really good Nebraska team, by the way, who came into the
Well,
game 5-1.
they're really balanced. I mean, Rourke is playing great. He is hurt right now, which is scary because it's his thumb. So I had shades of our Virginia Cavaliers when Sean Moore hurt his thumb. He was
Yes,
never the same quarterback again.
that's
He
true.
could never grip the football the same way again. So we were number one in the nation in
Yeah.
1990, and he hurt his thumb. And the rest of the way, we had to go to our backup. And even though Matt Blunden was good, he was a backup, and we had a couple more losses on there. And then he tried to come back for the bowl game, the Sugar Bowl, and play Tennessee. And his long ball looked like fluttery, and it didn't look like that all year long. So clearly it was affecting him.
Yeah.
And I heard Danny Cannell talking about it on a podcast today, talking about how out of all your fingers, your thumb is the one that you want to be careful with
Mhm.
because it's really important to squeeze the ball. But when one of these fingers is injured, you can actually learn how to squeeze harder with the other 4. They give you
Mhm.
4 pressure points on the top of the ball, but the
Mhm.
football, you have a thumb underneath. That if you have a hurt thumb, it's dramatically impacts your spiral and your ability to squeeze in on the ball.
Now,
But
if he
losing
had
one
hurt
of
his,
your 4
if he,
fingers strength is not as big a deal.
no, that's a really good point. I think if he had
Yeah.
hurt his left thumb, he could play with it,
Yeah.
but and get around it. But the throwing thumb, no, that's not going to be good.
No. So
I really hope
he's
for
out
him that doesn't.
indefinitely, and they just don't know how long that's going to be.
I hope for his sake it doesn't hold him back too much because this is a really nice story. I'm kind of rooting for Indiana. I
Me
think it's a
too.
great. They're always the bottom. They're the Vanderbilt of Big Ten, and all of a sudden they have a good team. They're sitting at 7-0. They got a chance at the college football playoff, and they can actually compete with the big boys. And yeah, I hope that's not too bad an injury.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'll tell you, I love that coach.
No, he's
And
great. I mean, came from JMU.
Signetti came from JMU,
Yeah.
and we got to see him up close and personal, and the intensity that he brings because we were at a game where Virginia was beating them pretty soundly. We were dominating. It wasn't a huge score differential, but we were dominating, and it had a big rain out, and it was probably a good hour shutdown. And
Mhm.
they came out and they blew our doors off, and they came back and won the game at our
Yeah.
stadium.
Right.
And it told you a lot. It makes sense now how intense this guy is.
If
I
you
was
look at
watching
his,
I
if
was
you look at
watching
his whole
videos.
career, if you look at his whole career, he started started in high school. He won 4 state championships. Then he moved up to like an Ivy League school. He won 2 straight Ivy League championships. Then he moved up to like a group of 5 school, did great there. Then JMU, he got them so good that they moved to Division One. Then JMU, then he goes to Indiana. Now they're 7-0. You know, he just wins.
Yeah, he's real intense. And I saw videos of him today, his reaction when his running back sprung that touchdown. I actually gave it to you. I sent it to you.
Yeah, yeah, I saw that.
He had a scowl on his face because he probably saw one lineman miss a block or something. And what was interesting in an interview I saw with him is he believes in intensity, but he said when my team is down and they're getting smoked at halftime, that's when I'm the most gentle.
Huh.
He said, I go in there and I'm gentle and I tell them it's going to be okay, guys. We're going to come together. We got to put up a big fight and we're going to do this together. We're going in back to back and we're just going to fight. And he gives a rah-rah speech and a feel-good speech. He said, when we're up by 30 at halftime against a lower team or something, that's when I tear into people. And I usually will light my coaches up.
So he does the opposite of what a normal coach would do. It sounds like.
Correct. Yeah.
Wow.
His intensity comes in when he thinks there's going to be some let up. He said, I might see one of my coaches talking with another coach about something personal, where they went this weekend or whatever. And he said, that lack of focus is what our players can feel, and therefore I have to put a stop to that. And it starts with the coaches.
Well,
And
when
he said,
when Virginia was up 35-10 on them at halftime, he must have given the gentle speech because it certainly worked.
Yeah.
and I
It's
wonder what
gentle, but like uplifting, and we can do this, and pointing out the positives, not pointing out any negatives. And he said, you do not need to beat down people who already feel badly about how things are going.
I
And it's
wonder
just an
how
interesting coaching technique that is obviously works because it's working everywhere he's been.
I wonder what he said to Matt Rule and what Matt Rule said to him after this game, because Matt Rule, was sitting at 5-1, kind of has Nebraska on a really good path back, and then he loses, 56-9 to Indiana. I mean, what do you say at midfield?
I don't know. Do you know that Indiana has not trailed at any point this season?
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're dominating the teams. Their number 2 scoring offense.
Yeah.
They have 13 former JMU players.
That's amazing.
They had, in this last game, they had 5 rushing touchdowns and 3 receiving. So
Well, let's go to the scoreboard and look at Georgia, Texas. Any other thoughts about this game? We touched it a little bit, but why don't you give your thoughts?
I have a lot of thoughts about it. I felt like Georgia ran the ball really well, and Texas didn't. Etienne had 87 yards rushing and 3 touchdowns rushing. Beck didn't look great.
No, he hasn't really looked great all year, actually.
I give a lot of credit to Texas. Texas didn't have they had 0 sacks, actually, but they did have 3 interceptions. So they did put pressure on. And Beck kind of folded to that. But, they were 6 of 17 on 3rd down. And Texas was 2 of 15. So Georgia's defense was overwhelming. And Georgia's defense had 7 sacks, 3 INTs. Sorry. Texas defense, 7 sacks, 3 INTs, 10 tackles for loss, and a fumble recovery. So
that was Texas defense or Georgia defense?
Georgia defense. What did I say? I'm sorry. Georgia defense.
Georgia had
7 sacks, 3 INTs, 10 tackles for loss, and 1 fumble recovery. That's a dominating performance.
Completely. And it wasn't just that. When they didn't get to him, they pressured him into making bad decisions or throwing it away, throwing it out of bounds, or throwing it in the ground.
Texas had 29 yards on 27 attempts rushing.
Yeah, that's right.
1.1 yards rushing.
Yeah. So what surprised me about this game is, number one, it was at Texas. The Austin crowd was completely geeked up for this game, maybe more than they've been in many, many years. So this wasn't a problem of intensity from the crowd or anything like that. Just from the opening snap, Georgia was all over Ewers, to the point where after 5 drives of failure, he handed the ball over to Arch Manning to see if he could do anything, because he's more athletic and he can scramble. And he had basically a series and a half and looked completely deer in the headlights, just like Ewers. Neither one could do anything. And so
So
in the
I got
second,
some thoughts on that one.
so in the second half, decides to go in, give his team a speech. They're down 23-0 at half, and gives the ball back to Ewers, and he actually did a couple things in the third quarter, which is good.
Yeah. So Sarkisian saw that Georgia was whipping Texas's offensive line, and because Ewers is not mobile, that's why he said, "I'm going to try Arch, because Arch can really run."
Right.
And he said he's going to be needing to run for his life, and I don't think Ewers is going to get hurt if we leave him in there too much longer like this.
That's right.
So he tried Arch. It just didn't work. He was getting bombarded too, and he couldn't get away from it. So he said, that's not going to work. I need experience right now, even though, Ewers is not playing well and he looks shell-shocked. I think when he sat down and then he went back in, it kind of helped him settle him down. So that was good coaching on Sarkisian's part. A lot of people are questioning, are you creating a quarterback battle? I don't think so. I think it was Sarkisian's known for being willing to try new things and change up whatever you need to. But at the same time, he was looking at what was going on, and he needed a quarterback who could run to protect himself. And so I think it was worth trying. It didn't work out, but that doesn't mean it wasn't worth trying. So that's why you go to Arch. Doesn't work. You go back to Ewers, and then you do a little something in the third quarter, but it just wasn't enough. You're getting whipped at the line of scrimmage, which is a really bad thing.
If you're going to take any tape from college football this year and show your defense, doesn't matter what team you are, on how to rush the passer, this would be like the textbook on how to rush the passer. The way Georgia did it, they just had him completely confused and bottled up the entire game, throwing off his back foot, couldn't get into his 7-step drops, having to shorten his strides, having to throw the ball a lot sooner than he wanted to. It was just it was textbook the whole game. It was really pretty amazing.
There's been a lot of talk on podcasts and sports media about the bottle throwing that happened. Texas was obviously frustrated. Their fans were frustrated. And there was a pass interference call on Texas. And the Texas DB
and he intercepted it at the same time.
Jammed the guy and slid off and made the interception and took it back, not to the house, but really a long run back. And it got called back. And the fans went crazy because they could see it on their Jumbotron. And there's a lot of talk about how bad this is for football, on how it's going to reward people for throwing stuff on the field. And my initial instinct was, no, like you got to get that call right no matter what. But at the same time, it is rewarding the team because the delay that happened is what allowed the refs to have the time to watch the Jumbotron and see that they had gotten it wrong. And then the guy who made the call wrong saw it on the Jumbotron, heard his other fellow ref saying this is wrong, and then that allowed them to overturn it. So in some way, the argument is correct that it would not have gotten overturned if there hadn't been a delay for throwing stuff on the field.
That's actually not true, because there is one challenge flag a half, and so he could have thrown the challenge flag. What the bottles
pass interference is not challengeable.
What the bottles did was it allowed him to preserve his challenge flag, is what it did.
Not challengeable.
No.
So that's the problem.
In the end, they made the right call. I mean, that's the bottom line.
They made the right call, but the problem now is fans are going to say, if we stall this game, they will have time to go look.
That was an atrocious look for Texas fans. There's nobody in the country that thinks that was a good
inexcusable. Look. And unfortunately, they did say this is going to be used now by angry home fans who think they got cheated. They will stall by doing something that's so. this is dangerous territory that they're standing on. My initial instinct was whatever it takes to get the call right, but the long-term effect of if the fans decide to do this and stall the game, the refs can't reward them for that by getting the call right. So it's a really tricky thing.
We'll
Basically,
see.
if this had been reviewable, the whole thing gets fixed. So
We'll see. It's just a bad look. A bad look for college football, bad look for
yeah,
Texas.
very
But
unfortunate.
in the
But they
end, the ref
could get the
made the
call
right
right.
call.
Yeah.
And maybe they need to look at whether pass interference can be reviewable. I think it should be. 100%.
Oh, no question. No
Yeah.
question.
So that's the real fix, is that they need to
Yeah.
allow the challenge flag on that play.
Yeah.
So next game is Oregon 35, Purdue 0. Purdue is terrible. We know that. But what was really interesting is how pedestrian and how easy these games are starting to become for Oregon, who's new in the Big Ten but sitting at 4-0, and looks like they're kind of cruising to the Big Ten title. It's really astounding. And they were beating Purdue so badly that in the fourth quarter they put their backup quarterback in to save Dylan Gabriel, and the backup quarterback threw a touchdown at the end of the game. So, any thoughts about kind of how easy some of these games are becoming? I know Purdue's
There's nothing to report on this game. It was a blowout. Nothing interesting at all.
Yeah.
One of the few. Most of the games were very interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the next one was very interesting, and that is BYU, who scored very late to win this game, 38-35, to continue to stay in the Big 12 title hunt with Iowa State. Great game. Came down to the wire. It kind of felt like one of those games where the last team that had the ball was going to win, and that's what happened. BYU runs it in from the 6-yard line to get the victory. Any thoughts on this one?
BYU's been really impressive. Ratliff is putting up good numbers. You know, he's working his way towards getting drafted.
I would agree with that. They've been really, really surprising, just as surprising as Ohio State, I think. Those two teams are far and away the two teams that are battling for that division. And, of course, what we think is only one of those teams is going to get in. So we'll have to see.
There's a good chance BYU gets in.
Yeah.
I think.
It's be BYU or Iowa State. One of those two teams is going to win it.
Mm-hmm.
Next game is a classic ACC game, and this has happened every single week for Miami. And for some incredible reason, they always come out on top. They're 7-0, 52-45. Miami gives up 520 yards of offense and 45 points again, and somehow wins because they have an incredibly dynamic quarterback that's going to go very high in the draft. Any thoughts about this? Louisville, of course, is a very good team.
This was an offensive explosion on both sides. I mean, Louisville's quarterback threw 4 touchdowns. And they put up, I don't know how you say his name. Is it Shof?
Yep.
Shof? I'm sorry, I don't know his name, how to say his name. Just had a big game. But you know what? Miami is the #1 ranked offense in all of college football. And Ward is just on another level. I think he's definitely the best quarterback in college, and I think Shedeur is right there with him. But he put up tremendous numbers: 21 of 32, 319 yards, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions, 93.3 QBR. Their offense this year has 4,041 yards and 338 points. So they're just outscoring opponents because their defense just can't hold anybody.
Absolutely insane. You know, so you can just imagine what the Heisman stage will look like in New York at the end of the season. You're going to have Shedeur, you're going to have Travis Hunter, you're going to have Cam Ward, you're going to have Ashton Genty.
If things hold, if there's no injuries,
and I don't know, you might get one more player come in there, but you know, you can already imagine who these guys are going to be. They're going to be competing for it. So, it'll be interesting. But yeah, that was a great game. I loved every minute of it. I watched every snap. And it's just, if you love offense, this was your game.
It was straight offense, just all over the place.
Yeah. So next game was the other epic game of the weekend. This was Alabama, Tennessee. You had a kind of a feel that whoever lost this game might get knocked out of the playoff chase with their second loss, and in a very packed SEC. And somehow Tennessee pulls it out at the end, wins this game 24-17. Alabama did not look good. Milroe threw a couple picks. They were very ineffective. They had a lot of 3-and-outs. Tennessee didn't even score in the first half for the third week in a row. That's 3 straight weeks. Tennessee did not score in the first half. And there's lots of concern about Nico and about that Tennessee offense, but their defense got it done. And I don't know what else you had to say other than they are kind of winning with defense right now and running the ball.
It is strange, but they are. They had 3 sacks, 2 interceptions, and a fumble. They made Dylan Sampson fumble. Their defense is showing up, and their offense is sputtering. So they're squeaking out wins. They kind of stole this one.
No, I agree.
Right?
Yeah, I really didn't think they were going to win. Yeah.
But Alabama didn't deserve to win it. So
it's funny. We were watching the game first half, and it felt like Alabama was really dominating the first half, and they were yardage-wise and everything else. And it felt like they should be up about 21-0. And I looked at the scoreboard, and it was 7-0. And I thought to myself, Alabama's letting them hang around, and they're not scoring enough points to put them away. And that's exactly what happened. They only scored 7 points in a half. They dominate. So
both defenses came to play.
Yeah, it's true.
Alabama's defense, I said they got waxed. That's actually not true. They played pretty decently. They just gave up at the end. They kind of caved in, but they didn't put on a performance like Georgia. But they just don't look as talented. Is really
this win puts Tennessee in a nice 6-1 position, in line for the playoff if they don't screw up too much going forward. They're in a really good place, and an Alabama win, of course, is huge. And Alabama, like I said, is right now look on the outside looking in, and isn't looking like they're going to be able to do this unless they not only run the table but find a way to beat Georgia in the SEC championship.
If they don't get in, this was the loss. This loss right here is why.
Yeah, that's right.
This was the one.
So another 6-1 team that is kind of flying under the radar is LSU. 6-1. They lost their first game to USA, and everybody wrote them off that they weren't good this year. And then they've just been quietly winning every week, and nobody talks about them. And I'm not sure why, but they're in really nice position now for the playoff, especially with Alabama faltering. Then he thought about this win, and Arkansas was a pretty good team, right?
They dominated tremendously in time of possession, 38 to 21 minutes. They had 26 first downs. Arkansas had 15. And they had a nice attack, Nussmeier's having a really nice season after that first game, 82 QBR, and their defense kind of had a nice game. So they're a pretty balanced team. They're rushing well. Their running back had 101 yards, Durham, and 3 touchdowns. So they're rushing the ball well. Nussmeier's playing well, and their defense is playing well.
That's right.
LSU is a dangerous team right now. You don't want to play.
Nussmeier made some of the nicest throws I've ever seen him make in that game. Some really nice balls. He's really
he'll be first. He'll be first 2 rounds and working his way towards first round.
Mm-hmm. Yep, he's rising, and some other quarterbacks are falling.
Yep,
for sure. So next game is our friend Luke, who's coming on Thursday night for our program. Really excited to have him. His team squeaked this one out. They really probably shouldn't have won this game. He actually admits that. I was talking to him about it today. The fact that they won this game with UCF having a pick 6 that they should have had, but the guy let go of the ball at the 1 yard line inexplicably.
That was crazy.
And
I sent you that video.
I know, it was just crazy that would have sealed the game. And then Iowa State, of course, plunges over the goal line with less than a minute left to win this thing and stay at 7-0, 38-35. Any other thoughts on this game? It's pretty exciting.
Very exciting game to watch. Both quarterbacks didn't do much in the air, and they both had 2 picks each. But surprisingly, they both had tremendous rushing games. Brown for UCF had 154 yards rushing and 2 touchdowns. He's like a running back. Mm-hmm. And the other quarterback for Iowa State, Becht, had 97 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns also. So it's kind of the quarterback was the whole show on offense on both sides.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
it's true.
Very exciting game. Strange ending with
A
the
lot of crazy games in this.
ball.
A lot of crazy plays in this game. A lot of picks, pick
Yeah.
sixes, fumbles,
Yeah.
balls bouncing off guys they should have caught in drops. It was just it was strange. There was a lot of interesting plays. Really, a couple good returns by the special teams. It was a pretty exciting
Iowa
college
State
football.
did dominate in both time of possession and in first downs. So those are always good indicators of how healthy your offense is moving the ball up and down the field. So,
You'll
they should have won this game. It's just the way it came down was kind of ugly.
you'll
They
see in
got
the
an ugly win.
you'll see in the highlight package that we're going to show right after this segment. You'll see some of the great plays that came out of this game, and really all of these games. There were some really fantastic highlights. So next game, of course, was very painful to you and me as Virginia fans. Clemson beat us 48-31. Actually, was a little closer than I expected it to be. The Cavaliers had a really solid fourth quarter to make it look a little closer with 21 points. Two of those
I heard
touchdowns.
I heard him talking about that today a lot. It wasn't as close as the score. They
Yeah, that's
scored
right.
late, and Virginia was coming back on their backup defenders. They did keep some of their offensive players in, but a lot of their defenders were backups. So,
Two of the touchdowns were Tony Muskett. He had come in for Calandria, who had been pretty much ineffective the whole day. So it was really nice to see Muskett get on the board with two touchdowns in the fourth against, as you said, second stringers. But Clemson controlled the game from beginning to end. Klubnik looked really good. They took their foot off.
They had 4 sacks. Clemson
Took their foot off the gas at the end of the third quarter,
Yeah.
and they go to 6-1. Any thoughts about Clemson as they enter the top 10?
Well, they dominated running the ball at the line of scrimmage. They had 34 minutes of possession versus 25 for Virginia. I think they're finding their way to start dominating teams they're supposed to. So they're a pretty dangerous team because they kind of remind me of LSU. They're getting overlooked a little bit, and they're starting to show you some dangerous traits that you wouldn't want to play against. So, I think it's the best team in the ACC right now, better than Miami because of its defense. And I think that while it's not the best Clemson team I've ever seen or anything, they're definitely improved, and I think they are the best team in the ACC.
I will say the Miami Clemson ACC championship game would be a really great game.
Yeah, it should be real exciting.
Yeah, that'll be really fun to watch. Another team that I don't know how, but they're also under the radar is the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. They just keep winning after their big upset loss some weeks back. And they dismantled a really good Georgia Tech team that has a great defense, and they just ran all over them. 131 to 13. Yep, pick six, but just can run the ball. And Riley Leonard seems to be coming on. He had some real nice plays.
Well, he's a really good running threat. He didn't have any touchdowns, but he ran for 51 yards and 2 rushing touchdowns. So he's a lot like the Iowa State and the Iowa State matchup against UCF, where the running backs were basically the quarterbacks.
That's right. Yeah. Any thoughts about Notre Dame and why they seem to be a little bit under the radar?
I think it was such an ugly upset loss that they had that they got dismissed out of hand, and they shouldn't be. They should be taken into it. You should take it into account that every team so far this year has flaws, and many of them get exposed on a certain week. So Alabama's gotten exposed a couple times. Georgia got exposed. Texas got exposed. So, they got exposed by a much lower team, but nonetheless, they're playing pretty well right now.
I mean,
I don't
Tennessee
think
lost.
they're a deep playoff team, but I think they're a playoff team.
They might sneak in. But one of their problems is that they're kind of looked at as semi part of the ACC. So we'll see. We'll see if they're able to sneak in. Next game was Illinois has a big game against Michigan. Michigan with 7 points and just looked completely punchless. Their defense is still pretty good, but Illinois goes to 6-1. They're another team in the Big Ten, similar to Indiana, that's just having a huge year for them. Any thoughts about this? And is this kind of rebuild time for Michigan?
Michigan quarterback play is so subpar that they can't really compete with the big boys. I think if they had a quarterback, they'd be pretty good. But Illinois kind of whooped them a little bit. They had some trick plays. They had some nice numbers. Everything was solid. Nothing was spectacular. But Michigan is, I have it down. It's 119th in the country in offense. So clearly,
hard to win a lot of games in the Big Ten with that. That's for sure.
Yeah.
The next game,
they dominated time of possession because they can run the ball to an extent, but they just can't score. They can't put numbers on the board.
That's right.
And do you remember the play Illinois had a fake punt? That was really cool.
That was cool.
The punter pretended like he was diving for the ball. He was a real good actor.
It was the tight end, by the way. It was
tight end ran up right up the middle because it all parted. Everyone thought they were gonna.
You guys who are watching, you'll see it in our replay package that we have after this. You'll see that play is actually in that package. So pretty cool play.
So
the next one is Indiana, Nebraska. We've kind of beaten this one up a little bit, but any other further comments on this game? This was, to me, the most surprising game of the weekend.
I really like the way the coach handles his team, his players. They love him, obviously, if they're all transferring with him. He's building something real special real quickly. This might be one of these guys who's a culture builder, and he's a very intense guy, but I like how he goes soft when the team has their head down a little bit and kind of.
Do you think JMU to Indiana was a step up? I guess it was because he go to the Big Ten.
Oh yeah, it was. He said, "I've been waiting for my opportunity to show people that I can coach."
And
so he's been waiting for the guys to come around, and I think Indiana was the best available. Do I think this is his last stop? No. I think he's on his way to doing something special.
Don't you think he'll go to one of the Blue Bloods one day?
Yeah.
I really do. Yeah. You'll see him in one of the top 6 programs one day. He's that good.
Yeah. Florida State, maybe.
He wins everywhere he goes.
He might be going to Florida State next year.
Maybe. I don't know. Indiana's going to try to lock him up, probably.
I still think Norville's a good coach, but I don't know what's going on down there. But that's
here's our winners and losers of the week. We got Georgia, Tennessee, Clemson, BYU, and Indiana up top. All those guys had not just big wins, but signature wins and resume builders towards the playoff. And all 5 of those teams really need to be taken seriously now. Losers of the week were Texas. They were at home. And it wasn't just that they lost. If they had lost by 3 points on a field goal or something, that's one thing. But they were completely dominated from beginning to end and looked very kind of outcoached and outmanned on both sides of the ball. Football is always won in the trenches, and they lost on both sides of the trenches. And they even lost the special teams battle. Alabama, I think, is on the outside looking in, as we said, unlikely to get back into the playoff contention, but we'll see. But definitely one of the losers of the week. Even the win they had the week before was very subpar for them. SC with a 3rd loss is definitely out of the picture completely. And they're going to be kind of in rebuilding mode. People are starting to question whether Lincoln Riley's the right coach there. That doesn't seem like he's recruiting very well in the state of California. Michigan, of course, with their third loss, and as you said, with the 119th ranked offense, has a lot of problems. And then Nebraska, I mean, I don't know what you say about 56-7, but that just shouldn't happen in the Big Ten. There should never be a lopsided loss to anybody. Doesn't matter.
They got stuffed in a locker.
56-7.
I mean, I agree with all these. I would put Army and Navy up there as winners.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
They just keep winning. It's crazy. It's so cool to watch.
You'll see in the highlight package, there's some highlights from both of them. And what was cool is in the old days, all the academies, all they could do was the wishbone and the triple option, things like that.
They couldn't do everything.
They can all pass now. All the academies can pass. You should see Army. They got a really good pass.
For the most part, is still a running team, and their quarterback is a running quarterback.
I know.
But they can do some stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, some nice passes. Really good bomb.
Yeah.
And so
I love it. I'm so happy for both those programs because they don't get all the recruits and they don't get all the money and the NIL and all that.
It's true. So let's look at the top 25 again, completely scrambled. As every single week we've looked at this, it's been different. Oregon at 1, Georgia goes up to 2 from 5. Texas at 3, Alabama at 4, Michigan at 5, and Illinois at 6. So Penn State stays at 3. Ohio State stays at 4. Texas plummets from 1 to 5. Miami goes from 8 to 6. Tennessee up to 7. LSU now in the top 10, along with Clemson and Iowa State. All those guys sitting in the top 10. And then just outside, kind of edging up, and you can feel them edging up, are BYU, Notre Dame, Indiana, and Texas A&M. All 4 of those teams are on the rise. BAMA slowly plummeting every week. And the rest of the teams, there's some other teams here that have a real shot at the playoff. Kansas State, Boise, Ole Miss, and Pitt. All those teams are kind of in the mix. And then you see both Army and Navy in the top 25, which is really cool. Any thoughts about this 25 and the scramble that happened this week?
I think there's a tiny bit of overreaction in there, but I kind of like it. It's not too far off. I will say that most of the teams that lost fell a reasonable amount in the standings. And if you won or you had a bye, you moved up slightly, which is to be expected. I don't feel that talent-wise, Oregon's the best team in the country, but I do think they're up there, pretty far up there. So we'll just see how this plays out. I think we're in for another shuffle next week.
I do too, and I think Georgia is the best team in the country. I think if Georgia played Oregon, they would beat them.
They've had one bad half of football this year.
Although I think Oregon-Georgia as a final would be a really good game.
Yeah.
I'd like to see that game.
Oh, yeah. I love Oregon now that they've gotten healthy. They are a different team. That offensive line's pancaking people.
I'd like to also mention SMU at 22. They're just a quiet ACC team that keeps winning. They're 6-1. Really kind of sneaky. And then Vanderbilt entering the top 25 for the first time in 23 years.
Yeah.
23 years. So
I'm happy for Boise State.
Yeah.
They're 4th ranked in offensive statistics, and they have played one fewer game than everyone else.
And Ashton Jeanty is in consideration for the Heisman. I mean, Jeanty's incredible. They are right now lined up for the number 12 seed in the playoff if they keep winning. They'll get the number 12.
I have no idea if they will keep winning, but if they do, they should be in the playoff.
Yeah, I agree. Well, definitely take a look at those highlights in the highlight package, and you can look at that right after this segment here. All right, let's move on to NFL football week 7. So in terms of some of the highlights that came out of this, we had the Lions hand the Vikings their first defeat in 2024 on a last-minute field goal. As I said before, epic game. I thought it was the best game of the week in the NFL, 31-29. Oh, yeah. And it felt like whoever had the ball last was going to win, and that's exactly what happened. You had 2 great quarterbacks playing at a very high level. You had excellent receivers on both sides, really good defenses, really good running backs. Both running backs made huge plays, and really good coaching on both sides. And it just feels like these two are going to meet in the playoffs again. And they feel like the 2 best teams in the NFC.
It does feel like the 2 best teams in the NFC.
Any thoughts on this epic game?
I think you said it. I mean, they were just – it was an intense game. Both teams had 4 sacks, so they were definitely getting after it, which you wouldn't necessarily expect with Hutchinson out. Goff had a nice game, 2 touchdowns. He was 22 of 25, so that's pretty awesome.
As a matter of fact, he was 20 of 20. And 2 of his incompletions were right towards the end of the game. He almost had a perfect game.
That's right. Jahmyr Gibbs looked really good. 2 touchdowns, 116 yards.
St. Brown had a real nice game.
Yeah. Really Darnold seemed like he had a little bit of a harder time to me than Goff did.
Well, I think the reason is because the Lions got more pressure on him than anyone thought they could without Hutchinson. Yeah. It was really surprising how much pressure they got.
Yeah, I don't think they're a one-man show. I think their depth goes even to their defensive line. It seems like their backups are ready for the challenge. So
yeah, I agree with that. It was a great game.
A lot of people are saying, they don't have to sell the farm to get a defensive rush because they have a pretty good defense.
Right.
Absolutely. Even without Hutchinson. So
everyone is excited to see the rematch of that game. They're playing again in November, so that's going to be really fun.
Although you could look at it a different way. You could say they have all their players locked up for next year, They have no outrageous contracts. Their quarterback is pretty highly paid, but he's not the very top. And they have they've been in drafting incredibly well, and most of their guys are under rookie contracts.
Mm-hmm.
So if your window is going to be open next year too, so you might want to get an edge rusher for this year, and then when Hutchinson comes back, you have both guys.
I think
and all you got to trade away is a future draft pick that you might not really need.
I think if I'm going to choose, I think the Lions are 1% better than the Vikings.
Mm-hmm.
But it's really close. But I think 1% better than the Lions, and I think the Vikings are 1% better than the Packers. I think all three of those teams can make a run in the playoffs.
You know why I would say that the Lions are slightly better than the Packers or Vikings? Their offensive line.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
They're the best offensive line in football.
And they just have so many weapons, man. I mean, it's so hard to play them.
And they're young. So that means even when they get nicked up, they heal faster.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
So I think I might trade draft picks for a defensive end who's going to be here for the next couple of years and take your run with Hutchinson on one side and that guy on the other.
Well, Cleveland is marketing their pass rusher. I would go get him. Well, just go all in. Get yourself.
Normally, I wouldn't mortgage my future, but that's only because you have all these guys coming up that you need to sign, and the Lions don't have a lot of that. They have their guys locked up. They have a good team that will be good next year.
Actually, you know who the youngest team in football is?
It was Green Bay, wasn't it?
It's the Green Bay Packers, including this year. And you know who the second youngest team in football is?
Probably the Lions.
The Detroit Lions.
Yeah.
And both of them are so good, and they're so young. It's crazy.
Yeah.
So next one is the MASH unit continues for the 49ers. This is so sad to watch.
It is.
Brandon Ayuk suffers gruesome knee injury, out for the season. Mm-hmm. And they're talking about 4 replacement options before the NFL trade deadline. So they almost shipped him out in a trade. They decided to go ahead and sign him to the big deal, and now he's out for the season.
Terrible.
You have Deebo Samuel, who's in and out of the lineup. He came into this game with some kind of weird sickness and ends up only catching 2 balls for 10 yards. You have Christian McCaffrey's been out the whole season. They're just not the same team. They went 1 for 6 again in the red zone. And this just isn't the same team as last year. I don't know what to say about it. Brock Purdy's not playing very well. The only guy he ever hits is Kittle on seam routes. And they can't run the ball. They look so punchless.
They can't run the ball. And a lot of their offense is predicated on play action and rolling out and being able to run the ball.
And next year they have to pay Purdy. And so it's just
they're going to have to blow it up.
Yeah, they're going to have to blow it up. I think so too. So I was really sad to see that. I don't like to see anybody get hurt. And they're just they're not the same team with all these injuries. They really aren't. So next one is Daniel Jones gets benched with Eagles embarrassing Giants in the latest ugly game. They got absolutely blown out. They scored 7 points. He gets benched. And after the game, Daboll said he's opening up the quarterback competition in practice this week. That's not a very good sign for your $40 million quarterback. No. Any thoughts about the struggles in New York, and is Daboll kind of feeling like he might be on the hot seat?
Yeah, I saw some statistics about when Andrew Thomas plays left tackle and when he doesn't. You should see what happens to the team and the stats and everything else. Mm-hmm. And he went out injured. So I think it's a team that's very light in talent. When they have everybody there and they're all playing, they can actually do some good things. Like the quarterback has a chance. Daniel Jones relies on everybody being there to make it happen.
But you know why Daboll, another reason he was so angry in this game, not only was Daniel Jones just horrific. He had like a 35 QBR or something. But Saquon Barkley, who Daboll argued for all in the offseason to please re-sign, and they didn't. Apparently he was really upset about it. And, of course, he tore them up. 176 yards and a touchdown. Mm-hmm. Just absolutely tore him up. And so I can't even imagine what that felt like to Daboll to watch the guy that he really wanted to re-sign. So Do you think this means more that the Eagles are rising again, or do you think it's more just the Giants are just really bad?
I think that they're predicated on the offensive line not having a bad day, which they have a lot of bad days, and they had some offensive line injuries, and their backups are non-existent. And if you saw what the Eagles did defensively, they ate, man. They really ate.
Yeah.
They crushed it. They did 5 sacks. They just, I mean, they
I
put on
still
a
don't
clinic.
think I still don't think the Eagles are very good, and so I think it says
No,
more
no.
about the Giants that they're just really bad.
They had a total domination in terms
Yeah.
uh, of time of possession, and you can see it. There's another stat to look at. Look at what happens when the Eagles have Brown at wide receiver. He's a huge difference maker for them. And when
Mhm.
he was out, they looked terrible. And ever since he came back, they've been starting to look a little bit better. So while the Eagles don't scare me much, they do have some nice pieces. And when healthy, they're a dangerous team.
That's true. Yeah.
I picked at the beginning of the year that they would win the NFC East and the Commanders would come in second. That still
Mhm.
might happen, but obviously the Commanders look better at this point.
Mhm.
The offensive line's holding up, and I like Daniels better than Hurts. So,
Oh, me too. So
but
much better.
the Eagles' defense has been very maligned this year, and they really went off on the
Well, they have
Giants.
not played well until this game. They really
Yeah,
have not.
they've been lacking. There's been
Yeah.
something wrong there. So, but AJ Brown is a huge difference maker.
Well, next one is the Browns. Deshaun Watson in tears as he's carted off with apparent Achilles injury. Looks like he ruptured his right Achilles tendon, which
He
means
did.
he's out for the season, and it looks like it'd be an entire year's worth of recovery. They think he won't even be ready for Week 1 next year.
Did you
Um,
see the video that time?
and the controversy coming out of that is that apparently the Browns fans booed him off the field,
Yeah.
and a couple of the Browns players, including Jameis Winston, were coming to the defense of Watson and saying that he had been the model teammate and that he had been great in the locker room, and that the fans shouldn't do that to him, that he's a Brown. We need to come together.
Yeah.
And they were really disappointed with the fans. So there's a lot of rancor in Cleveland. Things are not good right
Yeah,
now.
it's a disaster there. I liked Myles Garrett's press conference. Uh, he chastised the fans in a gentle way and just said we should never cheer if our opponent or any of us get hurt.
Mhm.
It's not something you cheer. We should be happy when the best players play each other. And he just kind of
I do like how he said it better than how Jameis Winston said it. Jameis said it in a very lecturing way, and
yeah,
I don't think that goes over well. These people pay a lot of money to sit in the dog pound
I know.
and watch the Browns get hammered every week, like my
I
Panthers.
think the way Garrett said it was, "We can do better next time. We need to do better next time."
Yeah.
And he was sticking up for his teammate too. So I liked that about that. I'd like to be teammates with Myles Garrett. I think he's a good
Well,
dude.
Myles Garrett may be a Detroit Lion very soon, so we'll see.
Yeah.
But next one is Chiefs win the Super Bowl rematch versus the 49ers as Mahomes and Purdy struggles baffle NFL fans. And this wasn't even a contest. The Chiefs just dismantled them. They have the best run defense in football, ranked number 1. They have the third best pass defense in football. And the 49ers just looked completely hapless. They looked almost like the Raiders trying to play the Chiefs. Couldn't get anything done. Purdy looked really out of sorts. Couldn't get very many good plays down the field. Couldn't run the ball. Lots of sacks, lots of pressures. And Mahomes didn't really need to do very much. He had a couple of really nice scrambles for first downs. Didn't have any
Mahomes
trouble.
didn't look great, but at certain moments he did. He looked like the old Mahomes.
Yeah,
And he just drives the knife into your heart
he
just when
does.
you don't think he's got it today.
He does.
But he
But
didn't look great.
It's weird. He's matured so much over the years that he doesn't need to feel flashy. He's not one of these guys, he's
Yeah.
fine at getting 150 yards passing and
But
no
I will tell
touchdowns.
you, the strangest thing is he throws picks like a really bad quarterback does.
Mhm.
Dumb, egregious, head scratching. It wasn't tipped at the line or anything. It was just a
Mhm.
terrible read. And then at the end of the game, when it's close, he's going to beat you.
I know, I know.
It's the
It's the
strangest
weirdest
thing.
thing. I know. Although this one wasn't close, but yeah, that is true. So
I mean, he had
Mahomes has
he had 2 interceptions,
he
you
has
know?
6 touchdown passes and 8 interceptions on the season. So he's having by far his worst statistical
Yeah.
year. I mean, it's not even close.
Mhm.
But amazingly, they're sitting at 7-0, and what can you say? I mean, they just keep winning. So
The defense puts so much pressure that it sends the good team's offense into a bad place,
you
you
had,
know?
and
Purdy,
you had
who led the league last year in almost every category, had 3 interceptions, had a QBR of 13.4, got sacked a bunch of times, and time of possession was 35 to 24 minutes, in favor of the Chiefs. So
when you can
it was
run
a
the
whipping.
ball like the Chiefs, they had Kareem Hunt cooking. He had 2
Mhm.
touchdowns in a really nice game. You
Yeah.
can run the ball and you can play defense the way they do, completely stifle what is one of the most powerful offenses in the NFL. Mahomes doesn't need to do very much. He just needs to pick up a
Right.
couple of first downs with his legs, throw it to Kelsey a couple of times. That's it.
Well,
It's
basically,
like
what
he's
I'm
got the
saying
hammer.
about the Niners is without McCaffrey, they're one dimensional, and any team that's one dimensional pays a price. So,
And their one dimension is not as powerful because they keep losing receivers.
yeah,
So,
and the receivers keep getting hurt. So,
and then I don't think Purdy's playing as well either. He just looks he's
well,
making bad
I think
bad
it's
choices.
difficult to tell whether he's playing well or not because there's just not as much talent around him. You're into backups everywhere.
Mhm.
So,
Next one is Marcus Mariota scores 2 touchdowns in Washington win. Jaden Daniels rib injury. This game was never a contest against my Panthers. 40-7, absolute blowout. Washington's defense really seems to be coming on. They're running the ball all over the place with Brian Robinson and Austin Eckler. They've got receivers galore. They had both their tight ends score, both Ertz and Sanat both had a touchdown.
mhm.
Marcus Mariota looked like an all-pro, and he hadn't played in 2 years. I don't know. I'm not quite sure what to make of this game. Is it just that Washington's that good, or the Panthers are that bad?
It's both things. I think Washington is showing how it's got a depth of talent in different positions on offense, especially. And I think it shows that the Panthers are really a bad team. They've traded away talented players to the point where they haven't replaced them.
Mm-hmm.
So they're reeling. They're not a good team.
And Dalton in his first couple of starts was really good. He almost beat the Bengals. He won a game against the Raiders. Now the last 2 weeks he's been throwing pick sixes all over the place. He just looks completely, deer in the headlights.
Yep. He had a couple
And
picks. Do you know what his QBR was?
no,
3.2.
oh my God,
Yeah. Yeah. They said he would have been way better off just kneeling down every play.
right? Kneel down every play, you get a 30 or something.
Yeah. Time of possession and yards was insane. 421 for the Commanders versus 180 for the Panthers.
I saw a meme today on the Panthers fan site, and it said, "With the first pick in the 2025 NFL Draft, the Panthers select dot dot dot." So they
Yeah.
think they're going to be the number one pick 3 years in a row.
Washington had
Good stuff.
26 first downs.
Oh my God!
I mean,
All I know is it looks like that system you can plug almost anybody in and succeed. That's what it looks like to me.
we'll see
Cliff
when they
King,
play good teams.
Cliff Kingsbury is calling those plays, and he's calling great games week after week after week.
I'm pretty excited about it.
Yeah. I got to think that unless they pay him big money in the offseason, he's going to be gone for a big time job.
I don't know. I don't know. He might like it there. He might be happy. He might say, I'm better as a coordinator.
He might like working with Jaden Daniels, You never know.
From what I've been told, from what I've heard, people who are around the program say Kingsbury doesn't like disciplining.
Mhm.
So he's not an ideal head coach, but
So
he's
he's
a
a
genius
coordinator.
in coordinating,
Yeah.
in
And
X's and O's,
yeah.
calling plays. This is his strength. If
And,
you can put it in a situation where he's well paid for that, he's happy. I don't think he needs the head coach
did you
title
notice did you
to be
notice
happy.
Kyler has never been the same without Kingsbury? Did you notice that?
Yeah.
And Jaden Daniels is more talented and taller and a bigger athlete than Kyler. So,
Mhm.
yeah, maybe he'll just wanna work with him the next couple of years. You never know. So next
Yeah.
one was Seahawks blow out the Falcons 34-14 to end losing streak. The Seahawks had a 2-game losing streak before this game, and they looked really, really solid. You had
Mhm.
Geno Smith to DK Metcalf on several big passes. You had
Mhm.
a couple of other big runs. Falcons looked really hapless. They scored a touchdown late, but otherwise it was a kind of a really poor effort by them, and their defense looks really bad. So, any thoughts about?
Well, their defense is really bad.
Yeah,
So we've talked so many times about, picking Penix instead of a difference maker on defense
right.
is malpractice.
So you and I
But
both picked the Falcons in the South. Do you want to take that back now?
no, I think that's
Yeah.
how bad the South is. Um, remember we said all four are bad, and the Falcons are probably going to be losing first round wild card or whatever. Um, Falcons are bad. You know, I'm hearing that there's a chance that all four from the NFC North might go. Well,
There's
that
no
means
doubt.
somebody's got to give up their spots, and I'm pretty
Mhm.
sure it's going to be the NFC
Well,
South.
someone's going to win the South and go to the playoffs.
Yeah, someone's
So,
gonna win and go, and I think it's gonna be the Falcons, but they're a really flawed team.
well, I would like to do a mea culpa and take my pick back. I think the Bucks are a better team than the Falcons. I really do, and I think they're going to
I
win
think
that
it
division.
depends on the week
Mm.
to week.
Give me Baker Mayfield and what he's got going with Mike Evans and that team and that running game
You
over
might be
the
right.
Falcons that are kind of a mess.
You might
But
be
we'll
right.
see. We'll see. So last one here on the page, and we'll go up to the right side. Russell Wilson makes critics eat crow in Steelers blowout win over Jets. And I really thought this was the most head-scratching decision by Mike Tomlin I'd seen in a long time. You had his backup quarterback, who was the starter in Justin Fields, who had won a couple games in a row and was looking really good. And all of a sudden, heading into week 7, he puts in Russell Wilson, who hasn't played since last year and didn't play in the preseason at all. And I couldn't understand it. I just thought it was a huge mistake. And he comes in and he looks like a world beater and
Well, I wouldn't say
absolutely
world
blows out
beater.
the Jets.
Um,
I mean, he had some really nice throws and he made some really great decisions.
he
Didn't
did.
have
He
any.
started off poorly. He had 3 bad series in a row.
Yeah.
Um, I've heard some commentary on this, some thoughts from various places that are interesting. Some people are saying that Justin Fields would have won that game too today. So in a different way. He would have they were breaking down plays where Russell stayed in the pocket or moved around and threw it to Pickens or something like that. And they're saying, but Fields would have seen this and run to the left and he would have scored himself.
Mhm.
So it's just an interesting look at how they have different skill sets. And you can't just say one is better than the other or anything like that. What you do is you
So
play
Will,
to the strengths.
so Wilson's the better thrower and Fields is the better runner. And you're right, you
Exactly.
get different dynamic abilities out of both of them. And so
No
maybe
question.
he's possible that he's going to kind of rotate these guys depending on who you play against, or
Yeah.
maybe depending on the situation, right?
Yeah, like goal line, they might go
Goal
with
line.
Fields.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So, I think it's a complicated situation. I think they're handling it really well. I think they're really lucky that Justin Fields is a really good teammate and
Hmm.
not sulking and he's trying to help and they want to win. Um, so I think there's a lot to be happy with there. They have the most boring offense I've ever seen, but this week they actually looked good. I will say that there were a couple of points I wanted to make. Peyton Wilson was he led the team with 10 tackles, 4 solo tackles. So
Hmm.
I'm happy for him.
Hmm.
Pickens had a huge game, 111 yards and one touchdown. And basically, the Steelers looked pretty balanced. They're running well,
Najee Harris was running well.
throwing well. Najee Harris had great stats. And so if you can get a Steelers with a balanced offense, it doesn't have to be super exciting. It's not. It's not going to be. But if you can do that and then have a talented Steeler defense again, which you have, then you've got a good team.
You remember early in the season, they were winning games 13-10. And the complaint was, yes, they have a great defense. Yes, they're going to win some games, but they can't score any points. And now they're scoring points in the 30s. So they doubled their offensive output. And if they start doing that and keep the same, high-level defense, top 4 defense.
And this is not a small feat because everyone knows the Jets' defense is good. So they whipped up on a defense that's good.
That's right.
So the offense clearly has the ability to do some things that we haven't seen very often this year. But I do not have faith in their offense. Don't get me wrong. But when you have a couple games like this, it can build up some confidence, and you can start to feel like, yeah, maybe we can play with these guys.
So last quote here.
So
the last quote here, it has to do with the picture you see on the right. Why Sean Payton felt bad for the Saints after blowout loss to the Broncos. Of course, Sean Payton is now the coach of the Broncos. He was playing his old team, the Saints. The Broncos blew them out, which they hadn't done to anybody else all season. It seems like Bo Nix and the team are really starting to roll now. Their defense is playing at a top 5 level. And he said after the game he felt bad for the Saints because they haven't had their starter the last couple of weeks. Of course, the Saints started out 2-0 and have lost 5 in a row. And who have they had to start? Well, the guy on the right there, Mr. Spencer Rattler, who had maybe the dumbest quote I've ever seen, where he says, folks need to realize this is only my second start ever in the NFL. It's all about playing time and getting the experience at QB to prove all the haters wrong. In my opinion, I don't see much difference between me and Patrick Mahomes. And I strongly believe I'm just as good, if not better than him. Just wait. And so this quote, he said it right before this third start, and it just didn't age well. I mean, I don't know.
I mean, it's an asinine comment from a rookie, but I think he's got an okay future. I just think he needs to keep his mouth shut and take his lumps.
I mean, don't you
think the impressive part for me on this was not the offense for the Broncos, it was the defense.
Yeah.
They had a pick 6. They had 6 sacks. They just had all these pressures. They were harassing Rattler. And I love their secondary. They're taking it to the house almost every week now.
Rattler might have a decent future, but I just think that the coaches must have been just rolling their eyes when they saw that he said something stupid like
they probably tell him you can't ever talk to the media again.
That's right.
This year.
That's pretty much. All right, so look at the scores. We had Lions, Vikings. We kind of beat that game up 31-29. Incredible game. Probably the second best game of the day was the Packers-Texans. Packers bring on McManus, who was retired, and he was sitting on his couch a week ago and gets a call from the Packers. We need you to come in. He does a tryout. He gets added to the team on Tuesday, and then on Sunday he's kicking the game-winning field goal against the Texans. Pretty incredible story. He used to be a really great kicker in the league, but he'd been out of the league for a while. They go to 5-2, and they send the Texans to 5-2. And this was 2 games in a row Texans lost. And a lot of people think that C.J. Stroud is not the same without Nico Collins, who's his really deadly threat. And so I'm sure he's really excited for him to come back because they just aren't quite as good, don't have quite as many explosive plays without Nico. Any thoughts about this really epic game between 2 young quarterbacks?
I think Stroud is not quite as good as Love, but close. They both remind me of each other a little bit, but Stroud did not have a very good game. 86 yards, no touchdowns, no picks or anything, but I don't know.
What do you think about these quarterbacks like Stroud and like some of these other guys, even Brock Purdy, who get so reliant on like 1 or 2 guys? It just feels like if the guy goes out, they're not the same team.
I think that's what young quarterbacks do. They zoom in on people. Although I will say I've heard, back to the Steelers real quick. One of the things coming out of the locker room was that Russell Wilson, part of the game plan was to try and really get the ball to Pickens. And it was to show Fields how important Pickens is to the offense and how when he goes back in, he's going to need to focus on that because Fields hasn't been finding Pickens that much this year. And
he's your number one receiver.
They wanted Russell Wilson to do it and watch Fields watch from the sideline and learn that. And that's the value of having your young guy on the sideline where you can teach him as it's happening.
Right. That's right.
You know, so
But
that being the case, a young guy might zoom in too much on one guy, but also he might be not zooming in enough. So it's just finding the right balance.
Now back to the Texans-Packers game. This felt like a playoff game, similar to the Lions-Vikings.
Yeah.
And it felt like two of the up-and-coming stars at quarterback. And but I agree. I think if I was to rate them, I think Love is about 5% better than C.J. Stroud, at least this year.
You know, Love made more mistakes and he made more good plays.
Yeah, he's kind of they call him the new Brett Favre. He really is like that.
Yep.
Every time he throws it, it could be a pick or it could be a touchdown.
It could be a pick or a touchdown.
Yeah. So it's kind of, you have to kind of live with it, I think, because he's so talented.
A little bit of gunslinger.
Next game, Bills-Titans. Bills dismantled the Titans, but the Titans are really bad. And I don't know if you can really tell very much from this game, although I will say that Josh Allen and his receivers and James Cook were all really cooking in this game. Any thoughts on this one? Is there anything you can take away from this? Every time
it was they immediately got Amari Cooper a touchdoction. He's definitely going to be a nice addition for them.
For sure.
It was pretty interesting. He was standing wide left, and actually Coleman was outside him.
Coleman actually told him where to go. Yeah, because
he looked over at Coleman, and Coleman told him to run a slant into the end zone.
Right.
And that was cool. And he hit him on the
You know what's funny about that is Coleman's the rookie, and he's telling the veteran Cooper how to run the route.
Because Cooper doesn't know the playbook yet.
Well, guess what? How many practices Cooper had before that game?
One, maybe.
One.
Yeah.
He had Friday practice, and that was it.
Yeah, he just got there, so obviously he's just learning as much as he can. But he was a nice pickup. It didn't cost them much, and just really a good, solid pickup for them. So
third round pick. I mean, that was worth it.
I'll tell you, I've been worried about Allen all year with his lack of weapons. And now you're starting to get something where I think Cooper's your number one and Coleman's your number two. Coleman stretches your field, but you're going to throw to Cooper more. But if you have both and Kincaid and you can run the ball, now you're kind of dangerous.
That's James Cook, yeah. So, I mean, if Cooper and Coleman develop kind of a relationship and they're really kind of dual threat.
Yeah,
it's kind of nice.
Cooper can learn from Coleman the current playbook, and Coleman can learn from Cooper how to carry himself as a professional.
That's right.
So, yeah. I might have to amend all my Buffalo Bills stuff if they start to have a nice balanced attack.
And if James Cook can stay healthy, because you saw the 1 week he was out, they did not look good. So James Cook is always more important than the receivers.
Well, I think if you have both, that's when they're dangerous.
Seahawks 34, Falcons 14. I think we beat that one up pretty good. Chiefs 49ers 28-18. We also talked about that one. 49ers just do not look like the same team. They dropped to 3-4. They're starting to kind of get in that danger zone. Like if they lose a couple more, maybe not make the playoffs, which no one thought was possible. And you start to think, is Shanahan going to be on the hot seat or not? Commanders, Panthers wasn't even a game, as we mentioned.
We've actually covered these next four, but
Marcus Mariota.
If you want to skip over the Dolphins one, you can.
No, we're going to talk about it. Marcus Mariota, though I will mention about Marcus Mariota, he did kind of revive his career here. He had been released by a couple teams in a row and was kind of thought to be dead in terms of his productivity. So that was a big game for him. Eagles 28, Giants 3, not even really worth mentioning.
We already covered it.
Giants are in a tailspin. Broncos 33, Saints 10. We talked about the Broncos defense being so incredibly impressive here. Dolphins, Colts. The Dolphins were winning the entire game and somehow gave this game up in the fourth quarter. I still don't know how they did it, but Richardson started for the Colts and looked really rusty. Didn't get much done. I don't understand why they don't just stick with Flacco as the better quarterback right now. Yeah, I think that the Colts probably couldn't have beaten anybody else in the league other than the Dolphins, maybe the Panthers. In this game, they really did not look good. Any thoughts about that game?
Not really.
I mean, they really probably shouldn't have won this game, but I don't know what Richardson's deal is this year. He's just really ineffective.
He's having a rough year. He's only played a little bit of football in the pro level, and then he got hurt, and then he just keeps going in, getting hurt a little bit. He's just having a rough year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
they got to keep him healthy.
I'd stick with Flacco. That's just me personally. I'm going to go with the guy who's playing better and who's giving me the better chance to win.
Yep.
Jaguars pick up their second win in a row, 32-16 against the hapless Patriots in London. Trevor Lawrence had some really nice deep balls in this game, and they had an incredible running game again with Bigsby, who's really kind of taking the league by storm right now. It's kind of a young guy who's coming up. Any comments about this one?
Yeah, Brian Thomas had 89 yards and a touchdown. He's a real nice young receiver.
In our receiver podcast that we did 2 months ago, we mentioned him, but we didn't focus on him. We focused on a lot of the other rookies, and this guy was chosen a little bit deeper in the draft, and he seems to be one of the real emerging guys.
He's excellent. And Lawrence had a 95.1 QBR, so he's gotten the message. And, you can beat up on bad teams.
True. Drake May goes to 0-2. Do you think there's any chance of him hurting his confidence, or it's just better for him to get reps?
I don't like playing rookie quarterbacks, but you'll find out over time whether you break him or not, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we'll see.
I don't think year one is when you get reps.
The Jaguars seem like they might be able to kind of get back to 500 here pretty soon and then give themselves a chance. Next game we've talked a little bit about, but we haven't really talked about the Jets side of the ball and what a disaster this game was for them. They were sitting there with a 15-3 lead and looked like they were kind of cruising to a nice game, and then everything imploded. They couldn't do anything in the second half. Their defense got torched. Rodgers looked bad. They couldn't run the ball in the second half. I don't know what's going on with this Jets team. They're just kind of a mess.
Steelers D came to play that day.
Is that it, or is it that the Jets are a mess every week?
I think that's it, because Breece Hall had a nice game. He only had 38 yards rushing and a touchdown, but he had 103 yards receiving.
Mm-hmm.
So if your running back is that dangerous, I don't know. I think the Steelers D just created mayhem.
And then, Rodgers had a couple of picks, but one of them wasn't his fault. It was right off the chest of Garrett Wilson, who's his number one receiver. Right. It was right off his chest, right into the hands of the defender. Mm-hmm. I don't know. They just seem either hapless, unlucky, or both. And I don't know. They're just finding ways to lose games. So my friend Alan, who's a huge Jets fan, said, "I'm just done with this team." He said, let's rebuild for next year. Mm-hmm. So 7 games in, he's just totally exasperated with this team. So, but Steelers look really good, and they're sitting at 5-2, and now they're starting to get some offense, which is really nice to see. All right, let's talk about Major League Baseball heading into the World Series. This is the series everybody wanted. Dream World Series of Yankees versus Dodgers is here. And the headlines are Hollywood versus Broadway, Rodeo Drive versus Fifth Avenue, Shohei Ohtani versus Aaron Judge, Mookie Betts versus Juan Soto, and Freddie Freeman versus Stanton. And you see a bunch of the players there. Any thoughts about this kind of epic World Series, and how much fun is this going to be to watch?
I think it's gonna be the most star power we've had in a long time.
Yeah, I agree.
It's just gonna be so great. The lineups are amazing. There should be all kinds of offense, stars doing things that stars do, and just it's gonna be really fun to watch.
As
I'm
much as I
gonna have to watch every game.
as much as I despise the Yankees, this was the game everybody wanted, and this
Yeah,
you imagine what the ratings are going to be
it should be good.
through the
They're
roof.
gonna have a real good product out on the field.
Yeah, that's right. It's gonna be fun to watch. A lot of good pitchers too. So it's
A
gonna
lot
be
of good
kind of
pitchers
great
and
chess battles all across the board.
incredible lineups.
Yeah. Yep. So you and I picked these two teams to be in the World Series, and we were correct, and we both picked the Dodgers to win it. Are you
Mm.
still feeling that way, or are you looking to switch that?
I don't know. Watching the Yankees. When Giancarlo Stanton came up after first Soto, then Judge, it's like,
Can you imagine having a lineup like that? Aaron
no,
Judge, Juan Soto, and Stanton in a
no.
row.
They're all taking turns just bashing the ball. It's just, I don't know. The
Yeah,
Dodgers have that it too. I mean,
yeah, they do.
just when
Yeah,
you
we
think
have a great base.
Otani's having a bad series, he jacks a home run further than you've ever seen a ball go before.
And then Mookie Betts hits a 3-run homer, and then
Mhm.
Freddie
Bad.
Freeman gets a triple. And then, yeah, this is going to be a
I
lot
think
of
these
fun.
are the two most exciting teams to watch. So if nothing else, it should be really entertaining.
I'm looking forward to this one. Starts Friday night at 7 p.m.
Oh
First
yeah.
pitch. First pitch. So I think that the whole country will be tuning into this one.
Might let the boys stay up a little late for that.
Yeah, I know who Brock wants to win.
Aaron Judge.
Yeah, Aaron.
Aaron.
All right, let's talk about Tony Bennett, his sudden retirement. What is the impact on college sports? Of course, Rob and I are both University of Virginia Cavaliers fans, and especially basketball fans and Tony Bennett fans. And you can see a lot of epic, great pictures of him there. You see a message that was put on there by Kyle Guy. Congratulations, coach. I'm happy not everyone understands your decision. That means you did it your way. So it's a really cool comment there. On the right side, you have a comment, Tony Bennett's the model coach. I think his legacy is that he never compromised. He did it his way. He was a master teacher, communicator, motivator, and also the ultimate mentor. And that's by a guy he coached against, Seth Greenberg. And then on the left, Andy Katz really summed it up really well. I thought this was a nice way to put it. That he was honest and genuine on why he was not the right fit for the current state of the game. He's old school. He embraces players getting compensation, but worried about the overall health of college sports going forward. He elevated UVA men's hoops. His character never changed. Benefit leaves UVA knowing he did it the right way. Bennett said he thought about this decision in the spring, but was energized by the new class of Cavaliers. But a fall break trip with his wife Laurel last weekend allowed him to reevaluate his life's priorities. And that's when he knew that it was time. So you see some epic pictures there on the bottom with he and his guys when they won the national championship and all the trophies and awards he's gotten over the years.
Mm-hmm.
So what was your first thought when you heard the news? And then what's your thoughts since then, since you've been trying to process it?
Sadness, frustration when I didn't understand what was happening yet. Disappointment in the timing, almost as if to like sabotage the season. Certainly not intentional, knowing why I did it now, but I mean, I get it. I've come full circle. I think I was impressed with his saying that I'm not the right guy to lead in this environment. I've always been impressed with him as a person. He's such a good example for young people. When one of the most amazing things was when we won the national title. A lot of people don't know that he was offered a huge raise. I don't remember what he was making, but it was like 2.4 million or something. And they came to him and said something like, we're going to give you a raise to 10 million or some huge number. He wasn't the top. He wasn't going to be the top, but he was going to be right under Coach K and right in there. And he turned it down. He said, I don't need a raise. I want that money to go to my coaching staff needs raises.
That's right.
And the remainder of that money, please put it in the I don't know what it's called, but it's the fund for development of his players after they leave basketball.
And don't make the pros. It's for the guys
And
who
don't
don't
make
make
the pros. So it
the
helps
pros.
them get their careers started. And millions of dollars went into that because Tony Bennett turned it down because he said, I have enough. And in his mind, he's there for all the right reasons and none of the wrong reasons. It's not about money for him. And that's a perfect example of it, because any other coach in their right mind would have taken the 10 million and ran. But he wanted to do important things with it, and he wants to leave a legacy, and he sure did that. So he coached a little differently. A lot of people didn't enjoy watching the style, but also a lot of teams had trouble beating it for sure. So his legacy is amazing as a human being and as a coaching example for his players. He has one of, is it second in the NBA right now? Something like
NBA or NCAA.
in pros, former players.
Mm-hmm.
Trey Murphy signed a huge
Yeah, I saw
extension
that.
today, 112 million or something like
4
that.
years, 4 years, 112 million for Trey Murphy.
Yeah. So a lot of his players are going on to success.
Yes, you're right. He does have the second most players in the NBA right now.
Yeah.
That is correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So he's obviously coaching effectively for the most part. He's got some bad losses on there that were hard to take as a fan for sure, but he taught the right lessons, and he taught his guys the right way to do things, the right way to carry yourself during losses. He had all these life lessons where, he had some incredible sayings about, a ticket to, or a huge disappointment can be a ticket to go somewhere that you would never go on your own. Things like that. I can't even do it justice, but he's an incredible person and a great man to lead players. And it's really sad that he looks at the current environment as so chaotic that he doesn't really want to be a part of it.
Yeah. Well, I have some thoughts on this. First one is, this is a guy who came into the ACC, the toughest basketball conference of all, 16 years ago, and looked at a conference that was full of Hall of Fame coaches, all of whom had 5 stars, and he had a program that had been to the tournament in 5 years and was full of 2 and 3 stars. And he immediately got to work, started teaching these guys. As Seth Greenberg says, I completely agree. He was a master teacher, communicator, and motivator. Back then, of course, it was a very different system. He would have guys for 4 or 5 years. Even if they were a 3-star, he could develop them, and he did so. And he took a lot of these guys that were really marginal talents. A lot of them weren't even recruited by their schools, turned them into pretty decent NBA players eventually, but also just great college players, and started winning ACC titles against Coach K and Roy Williams and all of these great coaches with lesser talent. And no matter what you say about Tony Bennett, that will always be his legacy, that he was able to coach up lesser talent to beat the guys who were, bona fide 5-star / NBA players. So you can criticize his recruiting, and rightfully so, but in terms of X's and O's, there literally was nobody better there for about 10 years. Every other coach would tell you that. Even Jay Wright, all of them would say he was the best X's and O's guy. What he did in the gymnasium that none of us would ever see in being a mentor to these young kids. A lot of them really consider him as like their second father. And I'm just so proud that he was our coach. I was so proud the way that he ran this program in a clean, the right way, with his 5 pillars, always kind of coaching and teaching those 5 pillars to the players. One of them, by the way, being lack of greed, being very anti-greed. And I think he just felt like the only way he could live up to those 5 pillars is to step away at this point, and to show that he really meant it when he was teaching these pillars to these young men. So, really sad when I first saw the news. It took me a couple days to process it. I now really do understand it, why he's doing this. He really doesn't feel like he's the right fit for this current system, which is all about transfer portal, NIL. You get a guy for 1 to 2 years at the most. And all he wants to do is get as much money as he can, because he wants to go to the league. But if he doesn't go to the league, he wants to get a lot of money
for him and his family, and that's understandable, but that's just not Tony's strength. He needs a guy for 45 years to really mold him and develop him into Bennett ball. So really sad about this decision, but I think probably for him and maybe even for the university, it was the right one for now. That's how I feel about it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, unfortunately for Virginia, we'll probably slip a little bit in the next couple of years into ACC obscurity. I'm not sure if Sanchez is the right guy or not. We're going to give him 1 year trial, see how he does. But a lot of these guys who were really good players came to Virginia to play for Tony Bennett. And who knows what the recruiting is going to look like here in the next couple of years. So we'll have to see.
Mm-hmm.
Hope he enjoys himself in his retirement. And he's going to stay on with the university as a consultant. So that's great. I thought for a minute maybe he'll go to the NBA, but I don't think so. I think that's even worse.
I think it would be going in the wrong direction. Yeah.
For his personal values. So I don't know what else he can do to feel like he's teaching young men. Maybe there's.
I think he can become an athletic director.
Maybe. That's possible for sure.
And see if he can maybe stem the tide on some of these rules and try and put some things in place that he thinks need to go in place pretty much over the next 3 to 5 years.
That's right. It's a unique type of coach in both football and basketball now that is needed. And it's one who is a master recruiter, which Bennett was not. Master recruiter, master guy can manage this new crazy system with having to recruit your own guys, having to recruit the portal, having to set up NIL deals with, booster clubs. It's just a different type of mentality. It really is. And, kind of sad to see all the old guys finally out of the sport. Jay Wright, Roy Williams, Coach K, Tony Bennett, Nick Saban. All these guys mentioned that this same reason was one of the reasons they decided to step away. So,
Jim Boeheim,
yeah. Really sad. I think what's the impact on college sports? I think that this was a huge kind of major shot across the bow to the NCAA to the point where they felt like they had to release a statement this week. And they mentioned that the huge multi-billion-dollar settlement that they had to work on with all the lawyers across the country forced their hand on the NIL. It wasn't like they had a choice. They were forced to accept these settlements to save the sport. And so they felt like they had to put that into that statement that they understand what Tony's saying, but they don't have a choice. This thing has been opened up now, and it's essentially professionalized at the college level. So thank you, Tony Bennett, for all the great memories and how you represented UVA. All right, so let's talk about the MLS. Who will win the MLS Cup? This is the bracket. One thing I'd like to mention here, Inter Miami is the number 1 seed on the east side, and Columbus Crew is the number 2 seed on the east side. They won the cup last year, so they're the defending champions. Inter Miami, of course, has Messi and Suarez, 2 of the best players in the world, and they came in so late last year they weren't unable to win the cup because it was so late in the season. On the west side, you've got the LA Football Club is the number 1 seed, and the LA Galaxy are the number 2 seed. So pretty crazy that the top 2 seeds are from the same city. This week, you've got on Tuesday and Wednesday, these 2 wild card matchups are going to happen. They're called the play-in games. Whoever wins those 2 games will play the number 1 seeds in both conferences, and that's when the 3-game series start. Best of 3 in round 1. My Charlotte FC, Charlotte Football Club, you can see I got my Charlotte FC jersey on here. We're playing the Orlando FC Club starting this weekend in a 3-game series. It'll be real fun to watch all these different matchups. Any initial thoughts about the MLS tournament overall?
I think they got a long way to go in terms of their marketing and their information dispensing. Just to get the basic information out to the public. I found it a little difficult to really find the information in an organized manner. I had to go to multiple different places to read about how things were operating.
Mhm.
But I think that the LA Galaxy and the Columbus Crew look like they're headed towards each other. The Galaxy has scored the most points in MLS history, which is pretty cool. And I guess Messi leads the league in non-penalty goals,
Mhm.
which isn't that surprising. And then the Columbus Crew have a very possession-based system,
Mhm.
and they have really good goal scoring and versatile players. So those two really stand out. Charlotte FC has the incredible goalkeeper.
Mhm.
His name is Christian
Kalina.
Kalina.
Yeah, it's
Kalina.
Polish. Yep.
He has 10.6 saves per game, so
Mhm.
he's off the chart.
Yep.
There's a lot of good teams in there this year. A lot of interesting players. LA Galaxy slipped to second, and LA Football Club jumped them. LA Football Club has an awesome left winger. His name's Buenga,
Mhm.
and so I think
Well,
that the playoff system is really interesting, with the first round being a three uh, elimination, or a
3-game
three
series.
game
3-game series.
series.
You know why I like that? I like that because it wouldn't be fair to these guys to play the entire season, 35 matches, and to garner all these points and get a top 1 or 2 seed, and then be knocked off because of some fluky goal or something.
Yeah,
I just don't think that'd be fair. I like the 3-game series, at least in the first round. I think that's a really good way to do
yeah.
it. The idea here is you want to get the better teams into the second round. It's just better for the MLS.
Mm-hmm.
So let's take a look at the rankings on the eastern side. Of course, you have Inter Miami, Columbus Crew, FC Cincinnati, Orlando, My Charlotte FC, New York City FC, New York City Red Bulls, Montreal, and Atlanta United, who slipped in as the play-in team. So they're going to be one of the play-in teams. So one of the questions here is Inter Miami the prohibitive favorite? What is your thought there?
Yes.
I think so too. I think if Miami does not win this tournament, it would be a surprise. They have that much loaded talent. And some of it they've been saving. They've been resting Messi. They've been resting Suarez. They've been doing load management like they do in the NBA. But they're going to be here for the entire series. And I just have to think they're the best team. Now, the only team I believe that can knock them off in this bracket is the Columbus Crew, the defending champs. They do have the ability to do it, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Another question is, Charlotte FC, do they have a chance to advance? Can they advance to the second round against Orlando? What are your thoughts there? I will tell you they were 2-1 against Orlando this season, so had a decent
They
record.
definitely have a chance, especially with good goaltending.
Yeah.
Uh,
I think they do too. I think I like their chances to win this series. I really do. They've actually been playing pretty well to finish out the season too. I think I see them going to the second round, and then maybe their run stops there. But the fact that they were ranked the 5th seed this year was a big deal for this club. So it'll be an exciting Eastern draw. We'll see how they do. On the Western side, of course, both Los Angeles teams at the top. Real Salt Lake, Seattle Sounders had a really good season. The Colorado Rapids were picked to be the number 2 finisher in preseason, and they slipped all the way to 7. But they've got a lot of really good players on that team. So who is the better team from LA is the big question. Is it FC or is it Galaxy?
I think Galaxy.
Why do you think Galaxy?
Well, they have a distributor, Ricky Puig, who they said rivals Messi in his ball handling and his distribution skills. So I think that lets a lot of their players. So obviously they had a little soft spot there at the end, but I think that they have a lot of talented players.
I think these teams are pretty close in talent. I really do. I wouldn't be surprised if either one wins that series if they played each other in the semifinals.
Yeah. Los Angeles FC has that left winger.
Yeah.
Scoring machine. They call him a terror.
Exactly. It's going to be fun to watch. It really is.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
next,
sure.
Next question is Colorado FC, are they a dark horse? Again, they had been picked number 2 in preseason and had somewhat of a disappointing season, but have a lot of good players on that team, and we're expected to make some noise. So can they be a dark horse?
They've got several players that people want to watch. Cole Bassett and Jordy Mihalovic,
Mm-hmm.
midfielder and striker. So they've got some nice pieces out there that are going to be a lot to deal with for defensive teams.
I agree. I think the last team I mentioned here that is also a dark horse is the Seattle Sounders. They came very close to being the number 2 seed, and they're really good.
They're the best defensive team in the league.
Yeah, I see Seattle and Colorado as maybe able to give the 2 LA teams a run.
Well, their goal would be to keep scoring down and frustrate whoever they're playing.
That's right. And get it into
penalty counter attack and get some goals that way.
It's going to be fun to watch. I'm looking forward to it. Starting this week also. Think about all the sports, Robbie, you got right now. You got MLS playoffs. You have World Series. You have
hockey just started.
You have the greatest college football season ever seen. You have NFL's cooking. You have hockey just began. You have NBA starting this coming weekend.
MLB is insane.
And World Series, it's just you can't pay attention to all of it. There's so much going on. It's crazy.
That's a lot. I got notes everywhere. That's
right.
I really do.
My favorite segment is the mailbag segment. This, Rob, was the funniest picture I could find this week of you. What do you think of it?
It's pretty funny.
Yeah.
It's not the funniest you've had, but it's pretty funny.
I also picked it because you had a Virginia sweatshirt on, kind of a call out to Tony Bennett. So anyway, I'm going to hand it over to you.
NC State on for their big win this week.
Yeah.
So mailbag, let's do it. There are 2 from the same episode, so I'll read both of them. You guys nailed it. The 2024 draft is looking like wide receiver heavy class, and I'm here for it. At Libho. And the next one is, you guys really do your homework. Love hearing about some of the sleepers in the draft too. Keep it up. That was at Tanver Emin.
I like both of those comments because, we do our research and we try our best to bring that to you guys.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We do this for our fun enjoyment that we always do, but we do more research, obviously, than we do just how we started this, our phone calls to each other in the morning on the way to work. But there's so much to watch now. It's incredible. So, and people out there are so well informed that there's a lot to live up to in terms of trying to get the information out. And but we love the input that comes in through the mailbag and comments. So keep those coming. Next one, super helpful breakdown of the transfer portal at Kawa. And that was from our transfer portal episode.
What was cool about that one, we did that with Jackson Moores, the kicker at App State, and he really helped us because he went through that process. So it was good to hear.
And then we followed it up with one with his dad,
right?
Who's very knowledgeable about that. So, yep. Next one, I feel like QB salaries are getting out of control, and it's starting to hurt teams more than help them. Love the analysis here. And then it was in Cyrillic letters. I couldn't even read it, but so
what is your thought? What's your thought about that? Because I know you agree with that comment.
Well, that was an interesting episode that we had. QB salaries out of control. I think this year kind of proves that a lot of these teams that have the huge salaries are losing. Not all of them, but a lot of them. And I think you have to thread such a needle to pay your quarterback, a third of your entire salary cap, that it's a really tricky business.
At the same time, if you don't have quarterback play that's in the top 15, then you're going to be a losing team. So it's really
you have to do it just right. It has to be done in an exact certain order for it to work well. And if you go out of that order, then either your window closes really fast or you get old really fast, or you have injuries and no depth. There's all these different ramifications that can come from paying your quarterback a tremendous amount of money.
And don't
Just
you think
ask the Jets.
don't you think the backup QB has become even more important than in the past? I mean, the Joe Flacco's of the world.
Yeah.
So important. You have to be able to win some games. Justin Fields.
Yeah, you have to have productivity with a relatively low amount of money spent on the salary.
Mm-hmm.
So, last one. Thank you, Maggie, for opening doors for female poker players at Real Estate Investment. So obviously, we just had Maggie on our last couple of episodes. She was talking about what it's like to become a poker pro and all the psychological side of it and a lot of different elements of it. What were your thoughts on that comment, Tommy? Thanks for
That's a great
opening
comment.
doors for female
I
poker
mean, yeah,
players.
I think we talked a lot about, and she made it really clear in her comments. Maggie did that. Yes, it's tough to become a pro in the first place. It's a brutal way to try to make your living, but that she is really knocking doors down as a female as well, because it's really a male-dominated sport. So yeah, really cool comment, and hopefully that inspires you and all the other women out there who are thinking about doing this to take it carefully, analyze it, do your study. But yeah, I'd like to see more female players in that line of work.
And if you are contemplating it, go on and watch those episodes and see if you can get inside her mind a little bit in terms of the challenges she faces, the different things she needs to balance in terms of family life and priorities and how to look at things, and then also how much time she's going to pour into the studying part of it, because I don't think I realized how much studying it really requires to become competitive, and how important it is that you have a circle of friends that can give you the truth on whether you misplayed something or if you played correctly, and the support you need. And so it was an interesting look into that world, I think.
Yeah, you remember
So
we
go
went
on back
into
to those episodes and leave us a comment.
That's a really good call out, Robbie. They should go look at those. And you and I both went into that episode thinking you'd play 80 and study 20, but she was saying if you're a new player, it's really the opposite. You're going to be studying a lot more than you're playing, because there's a lot to learn and there's a lot to understand in terms of the different dynamics of the game and how to get really good at it. So yeah, really good point.
She understood. She took her first winnings and reinvested it mostly into training materials, so that she could just keep learning from the best and getting all those valuable materials that all the best poker players put out there that aren't free necessarily. And she really knew her stuff in terms of how to do exercises that make you make better decisions and all that. So it was really interesting.
It was great.
So that's it.
Well, Robbie, any final comments for the folks as we close out another great week? So much great stuff going on. We got 2 Monday night NFL games going on right now. About to click over and take a look at them.
It was an amazing weekend, amazing week of baseball. I'm so happy getting to spend a good amount of time just keeping up with everything, and we get to do this podcast. But the coolest part about the podcast is reliving how cool the weekend was, and the couple of upsets that always are shocking, and the amazing football. And then you're watching a lot of young college players that are going to be pros soon, and then the pros, seeing if our picks pan out, and watching weird results happen and disappointing injuries really create a different dynamic for each team. So
that's right. Well, I wanted to just quickly make an announcement. We just hit 3,000 subscribers on Sports Guyz. So I just want to thank you guys so much for everything you've done to follow us, to listen in on our programs, to help us grow, to refer us to your friends, and definitely keep doing that. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, get a couple friends to subscribe for us. The more we can grow, the more great content we can bring to you. And the first 7 months of our program, it took us that long to get 1,000 subscribers. Then it only took 2 weeks to get our second 1,000, and now it's only taken 1 week to get our third 1,000. So it's just accelerating. It's so exciting. Anything, Robbie, you want to say about our 3,000?
No, just how much we appreciate that. It's been something that started as just kind of funny, and let's see if this is something we can do. And then we've started enjoying it, and then now we love it, and it's been really cool hearing from people, and it's so much appreciated that people go out of their way to watch our. We're having, obviously there's a lot of you out there that we've never met, but it's so cool to know that people are checking in on what we're doing, and we appreciate so much you taking your time, whether it's, I put mine on, my podcasts on when I'm getting in the shower, and I'm playing it while I'm in there, and then I'll get out and I'll get ready while it's still playing. I hope that however you watch your podcasts, you've found a good little way to sneak us in there, and whether it's on the way to work or what have you. But thank you so much for joining us on our episodes. And we, like I've said it many times, but we really love hearing from you. So please leave us ideas on things we can do. We have so many already ideas, but fresh ideas are always welcome. So, and comments.
And I would just say we have some really cool Sports Guyz auto magnets. And what I plan to do is when we hit 10,000 subscribers, Robbie, the first comment that comes in after we hit 10,000 is going to get an auto magnet. We're going to reach out to that person, send them an auto magnet, and we're going to do that on all of our big milestones. So be looking for that. It'll be a fun way to kind of recognize the fans. So
cool.
All right.
Thanks, everybody.
Guys, have a great night, and we'll see you next time on the Sports Guyz. Have a good one.